Hey, Ivan from the EV Stock Channel here, and today I've got a special treat for you. I'm going to be interviewing Andrea James, a former Tesla stock analyst that is super well respected. And she was the one that pretty much made the Tesla bull case back in 2010, and her research is absolutely second to none. Now, no, Andrea stopped covering Tesla back in 2016. So this discussion's not just going to be about Tesla and price targets and so on. Instead, we're just going to be talking about a range of different topics. It's always good to be able to pick the mind of some super smart people and just hear what they have to say. But before we begin, thank you to all the Patreons that make these episodes possible. And remember, all content is just our opinion only and not financial advice. So let's get started.
Covering Tesla to the level of detail I did impacted my life in a really positive way. I'm so glad I had that opportunity to research Tesla.
And was that just by seeing like the way they, tackle problems and the problems they are tackling, did that sort of inspire you?
Completely, that engineering mindset, growth mindset. You're not going to fail, you're going to learn. Winning right. The first principles approach to things, like you should question everything, go all the way down to the basics. It's all really healthy ways of engaging with the world. When I left stock analysis, I started solve for X coaching, and I get to walk alongside professionals as they solved for X. Different people are solving for different things at different times in their lives. More time, more money, more meaning, in general, some combination of those, right? And so like, what's your X? And then how do you solve for it? And I got that from covering Tesla and just thinking about things in that way. I don't do that anymore because of, again, day job. But yeah, so Tesla's really enriched my life in a lot of ways. I'm just glad they exist. Yeah,
Sam, I think they're a real inspiration to so many people, and I can't think of many other companies or many individuals other than like Elon Musk and his sort of team that can inspire so many people.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say, you compiled that video of me talking with news anchors. First of all, a news anchor can never be harder than a hedge fund manager. Like there's no way the conversation would be more difficult. So I was very, very prepared for those interviews. Like there was nothing they could throw at me on live television that like some investor hadn't already thrown at me, right? Like those conversations went even deeper, if that makes sense. And I think the other thing is that, there's all the hard skills, the modeling, the research, the understanding what's happening, going deep on the company, going deep on the ecosystem. There's soft skills as well. And I think one of them is just taking your ego out of it. Like literally, like you have this opinion, I don't have an ego. Like I have no attachment to your opinion other than the fact that like I've got one and it's different. And so I think that's how you kind of, if you can just stay even keeled and positive, I think it's like a great life skill. And thank you for pulling those videos together, because I went back and watched them, and so many people came to me and they're like, how did you stay so calm? And I never thought about it before. Why didn't you get mad? And I was like, I would just be smiling the whole time. And I was like, oh, because this is just an exchange of ideas. This is really fun, And so, I don't know, it was kind of like martial arts sparring. I think if somebody had come up with something that we hadn't thought of before, like, which probably have been countless times on private phone calls with investors, right? They ask something like, oh, nobody's ever asked that before. I actually haven't considered that. I don't know. I'm going to go find out. And that would lead me down my next path, which again, I think is that sort of engineering mindset. That's why I love being around engineers and working with them. I love working at a tech company where people are solving problems, because if you take this problem solving approach to life, number one, it acknowledges that there are problems. That's like really truthful and honest. And some people walk around and you can't even acknowledge that something's wrong. So that's really good. But then it's not just, hey, we're going to acknowledge there's a problem, but we're also going to think about how we're going to solve it. So I think it's just a really good life approach.
How do you approach a company in terms of like, how do you try and understand the company? Because there's so much to know. Where do you start? Where do you drill down, and how do you put it all together?
So the SEC filings are a great place to start. public companies, we're really lucky to be able to research public companies in that way. And there's a ton of information in those documents, even in the footnotes, the risk section, all of that. And as you read any company's filings, things are going to pop out at you. You read the risk section, there's a lot of stuff. If a company's about to IPO and they file an S1, I mean, a lot of us in business, we read S1s for fun. We're like, oh, there's a new S1. Let's go see how they talk about their business. Then you're going to have, supply chain, especially with companies that make things. So you've got the suppliers, supply chain, you've got the customer and distribution. And sometimes there's distribution channel, like Tesla sells direct to customers, but in some companies, they sell through distribution. So there's distributors. So you've got a whole distribution channel. Then you've got competition. And competition is really important to understand. And then you have macro factors that are going to affect all of the company itself, but all of, you have macro factors that are going to affect supply chain. Like Ford has a disclosure right now about semiconductor shortages. You just go pull their 10K. You can read all about it. So that's something affecting their supplier, which could affect them. Tesla probably will be affected by this as well. Actually, I haven't read Tesla's 10K. Like I said, I don't research Tesla anymore as my day job. Macro factors will affect the consumer and consumer spending, if it's a consumer products company, or the customer, whoever the customer is, competitors as well. So that's the basic ecosystem. If the competitors are public, yay, because then you can go read what they're saying. The other thing is they have the quarterly earnings calls and the transcripts. If you can go find those transcripts, company I work for now, we make them available all online for free, because it's really important to me that retail shareholders have access to this, even if they don't have a Bloomberg subscription, for example. So you can go read the transcripts. And sometimes you can learn more about a company by reading a transcript of a competitor than reading their own transcript. Or you can learn that, like when I was researching Tesla, my feeling was like the competitors weren't even aware that Tesla existed. I mean, it just wasn't on their radar. Tesla wasn't on their radar until all of a sudden Tesla was, right? If that makes sense. And Tesla wasn't on their radar as soon as they should be. I think there was a little bit of a mockery there, like this is not a real car company.
And when do you think Tesla actually got on their radar?
Once the revenue was in the multi-billions, because then that's all revenue that the competitors weren't getting. But I think it should have been a lot sooner. Well, before the revenue was even that material. I mean, when the Model S was still in design, that's the research we put out, right? Back in 2011, right? We're like, this is going to change everything. But obviously now here we are 10 years later and you're playing catch up.
Do you think that retail investors can achieve the same level of knowledge as institutional investors?
Increasingly, yeah. I mean, I think there's a resourcing differential, right? Like, there's people whose day job it is to research companies, and institutional has access to those. Those would be the analyst. I used to be an analyst. And then institutional sometimes has their own analysts, and that's all they do. But I think if you look at reporting requirements, transcripts, like companies have to put a lot of information out. Like it's required, like the SEC mandates it. So I guess I'm a believer in the little guy. Like it's hard for me to say that it's not possible, because I think if there's a will, there's a way. I also think that I was not classically trained. I didn't have an MBA. I was, I majored in computer science. I minored in physics. I got a master's in journalism, explanatory writing, like curiosity. We've talked about that before. And so I think even my approach to research it was just holistic. It was just like, let's take the entire ecosystem and unpack it bit by bit by bit. And every time a new question comes up, let's just go answer it. And I don't think that any institution has a lock on intellectual curiosity, right? Like if you're curious and, you can do it, nobody owns knowledge. expertise matters, but can become an expert because it's just a matter of learning and growth mindset. So I do think it is possible for retail. And I think the other thing that retail does a lot is like retail bands together. And there's more of you because you've got your message boards and your online forums and like your YouTube channel. I mean, this is amazing. It rivals anything that institutional has access to. So it is possible. And I think you're a proof point of that. And what you're doing with your channel.
Yeah, thanks for that. One of the things that I think is the hardest thing is just knowing what questions to ask. Because if you sort of start off with an incorrect bias and look to confirm that bias, that can send you off a completely wrong track. So if you can have like an open mind and just ask the right questions, that can then really allow you to get some good information and start to build up a picture.
Well, that's why you always, I say always, I'm not investing my my personal account this way. I don't have time. I do have a day job, but like, if this is something that you're passionate about, you should know the bear case. If you can only state the bull case and you're buying a stock and you don't know the bear case, you don't even know what you don't know. You should know the bear case. I think companies should know the bear case on their own stocks.
Sure.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, can I get sort of your feedback on that? Because you're talking about the bear case. And like one thing that I noticed within, say, the Tesla community is it's almost like a war between the bulls and the bears. So whenever the bears say something, a lot of people are really quick to ridicule them, try and punish them, do whatever. But my question is, what is the right way to sort of embrace a healthy discussion, to sort of see both sides? So if someone's not so bullish on Tesla or whatever, how do you ensure that you can allow people, to listen to the people and let the ideas come to the top and then, discuss the ideas as opposed to making it personal, which is sort of what I see from time to time.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a great question. You have to take your ego out of it. It's not your identity. Like, I have this belief. Like, it's not our identity. It's an opinion. And opinions can change. You always want to take in more information. So, I mean, let's put aside personal attacks and all of that. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like literally somebody has a different opinion than you, and you want to understand why they have that opinion. There might be some truth to their opinion. Companies have risks. That's the other thing. Like, there is a risk section in the 10K. You should read it. Like, okay, maybe their opinion is that those risks are deal breakers, right? They're going to kill the company, right? And your opinion is that those risks are not deal breakers. And so, intellectual honesty has to be able to look at multifaceted sides to things, to everything. It's not just stocks, although stocks is a good example. I think this is true of life. I did have this tweet stream about non-dual approaches and non-binary thinking because, you're going to go farther if you're a non-binary thinker. I guess it feels really good to dig your heels in and make something a part of your identity. But it doesn't necessarily get you closer to the truth.
And out of curiosity, have you seen any change, say, over the last 10 to 15 years in the way people have those discussions? Because one thing that you talked about on David Lee's interview was, how you dealt with a lot of people that were very skeptical of short sellers. And by you having those conversations, it really made you a better analyst. But what I'm finding, or I'm hearing from a lot of people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, they're saying that as time's going on with the internet, people are a lot more binary, a lot more, willing to just argue ideas as opposed to have those real conversations. So I'm just saying, are you seeing any difference in trajectory between, say, 15 years ago and now in terms of how those discussions are had? I guess you kind of see it also in politics as well.
Yeah, I do see it. I think about it a lot. I think, I'm very interested in Twitter. I take in a lot of content on Twitter. I don't tweet a ton. I think when people are disembodied from their opinions, by definition, you can't have a lot of depth and nuance. Like you and I are kind of face to face, not totally, but like you're a whole person, a flesh and blood human. I see you, like, you know, when I go out in the world, if you're dealing with a cashier or a clerk, like I always try to just be graceful with people and gracious with people. And I think most people are that way. People have bad days and bad things happen, but when you're online, sometimes I think people just, they present. And the other thing is, if you think about it over the course of the day, how many thoughts do you have over the course of the day? But you might consider, like, even people who are like prolific tweeters, not tweeting every thought they have, but even the thoughts they have, it's like, it's not, that thought stands on its own. And so what happens is I just think that often disembodied minds are not kind to each other. I think also anonymity. You know, there's, we learned, okay, this is going back to college. We learned about the myth of Gaiji's ring, right? Because when you put on Gaiji's ring, you're invisible. And how you behave when you're invisible is who you really are. I don't know if I believe this, by the way, but, and it's like, if you think about the internet provides you with the Gaiji's ring, you get to go out there. Now I tweet under my own name and my own face. So that's like, but like people who are anonymous, like there's not really a lot of consequences. I think society feels the consequences, or we all feel it when we're so polarized, but that person is sort of immune from the consequences. But the truth is that human is actually a human sitting at a computer, unless it's a bot, but let's assume it's not. And, you know, they've got like a beating heart and they're flesh and blood and probably have family. I mean, I don't know. Are they that person when they're like anonymously saying things? Like, is that all of who they are? Probably not. But I prefer, and I prefer to engage with people in an embodied way, you know. It's just, there's more depth. No, yeah. I don't know if that was helpful.
Like, I agree with that. Like, you have so many thoughts on the day, and then when, like, say the media, they cherry pick and they like show a person, but then they show one aspect of the person. I'm like, you can't have a view of a person based on one thing, because, you know, if the media showed something that you said at one point in time, it can make you look like the world's most amazing person or the world's worst person. So that's another thing that I sort of try and consider.
Yeah, this is why people are looking for reform and incarceration, right? Nobody is the worst thing they've ever done. We're probably not the best thing we ever done either, right? You know, yeah, here's the other thing I think about. You have a choice in how you respond in the world. Like, we all have a choice. We get to make that choice every day. Sometimes when we make a bad choice, you get to fix that, hopefully. Everybody is leaking something. You're like, you're going to leak. So you got to get like right in here. And then what you leak will be better. And I'm not like always positive all the time, but I do try to, in any sort of public forum, I try to leak. I try to be conscious of what I leak. Like, what am I leaking out into the world? Am I leaving it a little bit better, a little bit worse? And there's room for, and I'm not saying there's no room for anger. There's definitely room for anger. I think anger is a pretty healthy emotion, actually, I think. That's a whole other thing. But especially in online realms, I mean, people go for zingers. There's a lot of cynicism. There's a lot of sarcasm. I don't know. There's humor too.
A lot of people watching this interview are going to be dying to hear sort of what your thoughts on Tesla is. But before you answer that question, maybe can you just tell us, like, are you following the company, or are you just sort of content, you know, sitting on the sidelines and just watching how it all plays out?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm invested. I own the stock. I don't have plans to sell it. I've been a buyer on the dips. I own a Tesla vehicle. I'm probably gonna be a Tesla customer for life. I'd like to get a Cybertruck. Wow. I think that'd be awesome. So there's that side of it. In terms of researching the company, like, I pay attention to what they put out. I will occasionally listen to the earnings calls now, but I'm not doing the work. Like, I was used to be really doing the work. I was doing so much work. I have a day job. It's not researching Tesla. I'm an executive at a company, a high growth tech company. I have a team. I'm responsible for quite a bit. I do investor relations as well. I do a lot of talking with shareholders at my own company. And so I like, there's only so many hours in the day. I also try to be really healthy with my life and get good amount of sleep. I have a family, you know, so all of those things, my life is very full. And I'm very content, but I'm not doing the day-to-day work that I was doing. So I would say at this point, my opinion is probably worth less than yours, quite frankly, or anybody who's doing the work, because I really admire doing the work. I used to do it, and I'm really proud of the work I did. And I know I'm not doing it to the level that I used to do it, because it used to be my full-time job, right? And a lot of late nights, early mornings, weekends, traveling, researching that company. And I don't know, I probably don't even spend 1/100th of the time on it today that I used to. So
I think you're being really humble, because yeah, again, from what I saw on the David Lee interview, the way you sort of, the research that you put into Tesla, like I was saying, like you are literally from the future. Everything that you sort of said pretty much turned out, but it wasn't the fact that you were right, but you were right for the right reasons. Like you did all that research. I mean, you talked about like the spreadsheet that you did that sort of calculated all the battery costs. I'm like, how do you even get that information? Like,
yeah, you almost have to be like an information hoarder.
mm.
And you have to be like organized about it. So you like have a spreadsheet, maybe some documents, and every time you find something, you add it, you know, and you got these matrices, and you're like, and so like what you're doing is you're constantly going out and reading, but you'll find a nugget here, a nugget here, a nugget there. That's how you become an expert on something, right? And when we pull it all together into one place, that's how you end up becoming an expert, because it doesn't all exist in one place anywhere else. You're creating that repository of knowledge, which is really exciting and fun. And if you want to geek out on, I mean, like you get to geek, it's like so fun. I don't know if like when you'll feel complete with Tesla and you'll try to find the next one. I remember, this reminds me of a story. I remember one year, I'm trying to remember which year it was. You have to give your top stock pick of the year. And I remember it was like, so 2013, Tesla did amazing. But then I'm like, what's the next Tesla? And I remember having this moment where I was like, Tesla is the next Tesla. And that felt really good. I don't know if that's the answer today, because I'm not doing the work. It's like, what's the next 100 bagger? I don't know. You know, wouldn't it be great if we all could find it?
Well, the one thing that I'm pretty sure about is the next Elon Musk is not going to build an electric vehicle company. It's going to be something else, solving another major challenge. Because that's one thing that always, you know, people say, oh, this person's the next Elon Musk. He's got this little prototype of an EV. And I'm like, no.
That problem, like they're solving that. Energy storage problem, Tesla's, they're solving that. So what's the next big problem? Like, well, and I guess basically what you do is you say, what are the big problems facing humanity? Because that's what Elon did, right? When he sold PayPal, he's like, okay, we need to be multi-planetary species. Well, how do we do that? Oh, the cost of rocketry is too high. We've got to drive it down. Okay. You know, carbon emissions.
And what are your thoughts? What are the next, what are the major problems that need to be solved, you know, after climate change and energy?
Well, I'll tell you what troubles me, or over-reliance on plastics. The amount of waste we generate, it just feels really unhealthy. There's an article recently in the New York Times, what are the sperm telling us? Like sperm counts are down. Like that's not good. So I worry about use of plastics. You always sound crazy when you talk about what you worry about. I worry about societal polarization. This idea that we can't, democracies. I think it's tough. I think democracies are having a tough time right now. Although I hope I'm optimistic there. I'm optimistic there, and because that. So I'll give you just an example. That's something where, you know, faith in institutions, trust between communities and policing, like that has always been a big concern for me, but I work at a company that's working on it. So that's how I tackle that in my life, is just, okay, this is something that I saw. Sustainable energy is a big one. Tesla's working on that. I think, what else? What about you?
I think in the medical field, like just being able to better diagnose and treat disease will really go a long way, because I feel like there's so much potential, in the health space to allow people to live healthier lives, especially if we can treat. But then also, I think at some point we have to do a better job at working out why people are getting sick in the first place. And like one of the things was, as we mentioned, was like, say, the pollution coming out of, the exhaust. If we can stop that, that plays a role. But exhaust pollution is only one aspect of that. There's so many different aspects which are contributing to poor health. If we need to sort of tackle all of them, and also say, like, as you mentioned, the plastics, like, yes, so much plastic is ending up in the ocean. So every step, like, McDonald's have switched from plastic straws to paper straws. These are all these little things that we just need to keep doing incrementally. And the sooner we do them, it has a big effect. Like, if we do it 2-3 years earlier, that's 2-3 years worth of junk that ends up in the ocean. It's a big difference.
Yeah, those things, the food system, especially in the United States, we're really good at delivering calories, but we're not great at delivering nutrients quickly. I eat a lot of what I call nature's fast food because I don't have a lot of time, right? And so apples, fruit, vegetables, nature's fast food, like you can just eat it.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily always have to cook, but I definitely feel like there's just a lot of sugar and unhealthy food being consumed. And I think that it's causing chronic illness. And I see this when I travel, when I can't control my food sources, how hard it is to, eat healthy when you're traveling and just maintain a healthy lifestyle. I sometimes walk through the airport and I think, wow, I'm surrounded by not food. It's things that won't kill me. I can put in my body, it won't kill me, at least not immediately, maybe slowly. But it's not actually nutrients that my body can use.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing, that a personal journey I've gone over the last 5 years, but really in earnest, the last 2 to 3 years is just really eating really healthy. A lot more fruits, vegetables. I do eat meat. I'm not vegetarian, but nutrient density is something that I solve for in my private life.
Yeah.
So that's another one. I just look at the food system and I think it's not people's fault. They end up with chronic illness. I grew up in a working class family. What I thought was a healthy breakfast growing up, like I love bagel and cream cheese, right? Like I eat pizza all the time. I love pizza, but it's awesome, but it's not supposed to be like what you eat every day. And I didn't know that. It took me to like my 30s to learn this, right? So I don't blame people. It's not their fault, but I just think the food system is just, I don't know if it's incentivized in the right way. So I think about that a lot.
And the only other one that really comes to mind for me is I'm concerned with the way people don't know how to think. Like with the internet, every idea has become like almost mainstream. So if you have this strange idea and you type that into the internet, you'll get confirmation bias. But that doesn't always lead you to the truth. And I find people don't know how to evaluate what's real and what's fake. Like you see, like for like a whole bunch of conspiracy theories sort of popping up because people just don't know how to fact check things. They may not have, trust in research or even know how the research process works. So that's just one of the other things that I find as a bit of a concern.
Well, yeah, it's like, how do you, like, what is truth? And so the breakdown in societal trust, and I think that's what I meant before when I talked about democracies, that is really concerning. And I don't know what the solution is. I think our phones are addictive. I know I'm addicted to mine. The Social Dilemma, you went into that. I thought it was a good documentary. Did you see The Social Dilemma?
No.
I think that was the documentary that came out last year. I think it was, it's about social media and just, it's like that dopamine hit. We always want that dopamine hit. So you're always checking.
Yeah.
and by the way, I'm pro tech. Like I love tech, not
Yeah,
anti-tech at all. It's
same.
just about like, it's like, how do you make sure tech enhances your life and you don't become a slave
Mhm.
to it? Okay,
Yeah,
I thought of another thing that I think about a lot.
go for it.
Um, I think that people often go through life traumatized, or like they don't understand the impact of trauma on their life. And I wish that more of the world were trauma informed, which is, it's like a mental health issue. Because I think when you've been traumatized, you react to the world in certain ways. And most people, or many people, have been traumatized in some way. So I think that's another thing I think about a lot. Um, and I don't know if there's like a tech solution for that necessarily, but I wish people were more aware of it. And I think you talked about before, we talked about like, why do people react so strongly when someone disagrees with them? And it's, again, it's that like, how do you get right in here? How do
Mm,
you like, I am okay. That person disagrees with me. That doesn't mean I don't need to respond as if I'm personally threatened, because you're
mm,
not online. Like,
mm,
especially if it's a stock opinion. Come on.
mm. Yeah.
This
Mm,
is where I've realized lately I can't tolerate anymore. People who mock, people who mock the doers. Like,
mm,
there's people out there really doing things. They're really trying. They're putting their art out there. They're putting their creativity, their poetry, their music. Elon, hey, we want to go to Mars.
mm,
And if there's an area where I'll just sort of cut people out of my life, it's if they mock it. Why would you mock it?
mm,
Question it,
mm.
but don't mock it. Don't mock
Exactly.
the doers. Why? And so I get really excited, just thinking about Mars, or what does that mean to be multiplanetary? And it's really inspirational, right? It just gives us something to hold on to. Every time SpaceX does a launch, I'm like bawling. I watch it with my
Mm,
kids now. My kids want to like leave Earth. I mean, how cool?
mm,
Not me. I like the trees and the birds and the blue sky. But like, and so I definitely feel like that's another thing. You can choose how to show up. You don't have to mock.
mm.
I don't know. Maybe you don't believe it. You can be skeptical, but why mock it? I just don't. I guess I don't get it. And the older I get, I'm just like, I don't really have time for that.
Yeah, I'm the same boat. As soon as anyone's sort of complaining about something, I just have to like leave because it's like, no, let's discuss how to solve a problem. But whinging, it just accomplishes nothing.
Yeah, the company I work for now, we've had these like big dreams. The CEO, Rick Smith, he's got this book called the Zoom is like the end of killing. It's like, literally, how do we make it so people don't have to kill each other anymore? Um,
Mm.
how amazing, right? Like, and that's like a really lofty goal, and I love it. Like, it's something I think about a lot and concerns me, and it's something I feel like I get to work on in my career.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. And if you want to know more about Andrea, she did an awesome interview with David Lee back in 2016 in which she discussed her story of covering Tesla in a lot more detail. And also, if you want to see some of the things Andrea said over the early years of Tesla, check out the following video. So that's all for today, and stay tuned as I'll be soon releasing a new episode about Tesla's raw battery material supply chain that's going to go all into graphite. So until then, I'll see you guys soon.